Oh, thanks everyone for having me. I apologize in advance. I just flew in this morning from Tokyo, so I'm a little tired, but I think this will be nice and fun. Not a lot of words, just a lot of pictures. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Blue Bottle, what we do, and how we've grown as a company in the last 12 years that we've been around, 13 years almost. The biggest question that everybody asks is why Blue Bottle, where the name comes from. So the name Blue Bottle Coffee, or Blue Bottle as a cafe, is actually dates back to the 1600s. There was a gentleman who helped warn the Austrians that basically the Turks were coming to invade Vienna. And after the Turks got kicked out of Vienna as the Turkish Empire was sweeping across Europe, this gentleman who had spent time in the Middle East knew what the coffee bags that were left behind by the Turks were. The people from Vienna thought they were food for the camels, and he knew they were coffee. So the mayor of Vienna gave him some money, and he opened the first cafe in Central Europe that in German was called De Blaue Flasche, or the Blue Bottle. So that's where the name Blue Bottle comes from. Blue Bottle is a very retail-focused company. We're one of the 3 or 4 companies in the U.S. who are sort of part of this third wave niche of roasters, very, very high-end coffees, and presenting them to our customers. One thing that makes Blue Bottle unique is that our model is predominantly retail, similar to Starbucks, similar to Peet's. Unlike some of our competitors like Stumptown Coffee, Intelligentsia Coffee, Counterculture, many of those companies focus on wholesale, so they're selling their coffee to other retailers or grocery stores. About 85% of our coffee we sell in our own stores. So I'm going to give you a tour of our retail stores because retail is what we focus on, what we do really well. So you're going to see all of them today. And then I'll dive into some of the back end of what we do toward the end of this presentation. First off, Blue Bottle was founded in 2002 in Oakland, California by James Freeman. James, this gentleman here, was a musician, a professional clarinet player for many years before founding Blue Bottle. After traveling and tasting coffee all over the world, especially a lot in Japan, he got back to Oakland and it was really difficult for him to find fresh roasted coffee. So just as a hobby, he started roasting coffee at home, first on a pan, and then he got a small roaster, and for a couple of years was roasting coffee in a potting shed, a place where plants were potted. They had a roof that was about this tall. James never set out to start a large-size coffee roasting company. He only did it because he enjoyed coffee and wanted to share coffee with his friends and his family. As the sort of buzz grew very organically, he decided to open a farmer's market stand, first in Berkeley and then in San Francisco, and then we still actually operate in 8 weekly farmers markets in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the first farmers market location was in 2003. For the first 6 months, there was actually no coffee served. James only sold whole bean coffee, and by only making the coffee available once a week at these farmers markets, he created a buzz and somewhat of a cult following. As I was introduced, it was mentioned that I worked for Zoka Coffee, and I started in Zoka in 2000. Actually, in 2003, this sort of buzz of Blue Bottle we'd heard in Seattle, and I got sent on a business trip specifically to visit Blue Bottle Coffee because we heard about this place where people waited in line for 45 minutes for a cup of coffee to be hand brewed. No one was doing pour-over coffee in Seattle in the early 2000s. It didn't exist. Blue Bottle was one of the companies who really made that happen, and even 11 years ago, there was such a buzz about it that I was sent specifically on a mission to see what this was all about. And I remember waiting about 45 or 50 minutes for my coffee and thinking, wow, these people are a little crazy, but this is kind of cool. From there, James opened a really, really small store in February of 2005 in a neighborhood called Hayes Valley. At the time, Hayes Valley was not a very desirable neighborhood in San Francisco. Because of sort of a transportation infrastructure, there was a lot of homeless people, a lot of drugs in this area. Now in 2014, 9 years later, because of the gentrification that's happened there, Hayes Valley is probably the most sought after, most expensive neighborhood in all of San Francisco. And it's just a garage. It's really simple. Same cafe exists today. And James just wanted to serve coffee, have a store that was open every single day. To this day, at all of our locations all over, we still only sell coffee in bags that's 48 hours old. After it's 48 hours out of the roaster, it becomes coffee that we serve and that we make for people. The coffee peaks, of course, in flavor after 5 or 6 days, but we want the customers to have it in their hand very fresh. And also, sustainability plays into that, and I'll get to that in a little bit. This is, again, like I said, just a garage. There's a line all day, every day, from before we open to after we have to cut it off. And we sell, other than a few little pastries like cookies and such, we sell about $3,000 to $4,000 a day worth of coffee here at this garage. 3 years later, James was presented a really great opportunity to open in a very, very beautiful building in an area called Mint Plaza in San Francisco. This was sort of James's dream cafe, and I think at the time he thought maybe this was going to be the last one. Sorry about that. Pushed the wrong button. The Mint Plaza was a place where James could bring some of these Japanese brew methods that he'd come to know in Japan when he traveled there, present them. We have a siphon bar there. We also do a few other methods that are unique to Japan. We also have a full food menu here, and everything we produce in-house, from the sourcing of our ingredients for our kitchen. Most everything is organic. For a long time, all of our coffees were also certified organic. We're still about 85% certified organic, I would say, for our coffee selections. And then after the Mint Plaza, the buzz really started to pick up. The next year, we were invited to the Ferry Building in San Francisco. And again, all of this growth very organically, very word of mouth, especially the growth in the Bay Area. The Ferry Building is a place in San Francisco where you can get sort of the best curated food experience for California. You can get the best wine and cheese and meat, mushrooms, beans, everything you can imagine that you would put in your body. So we actually have, this is our busiest store in the entire company. You could see the espresso machine on the left there. We have another window on the side. And then in January, we're going to be remodeling this location, adding a third machine. On Saturdays, there's also a public farmers market where we have 2 more locations. So on a busy Saturday at this one spot at the Ferry Building, we can do upwards of $20,000 in coffee sales, just coffee. We have, again, a few pastries. After that, we were invited to the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco. This was also a time where we sort of allowed James's wife to sort of expand what she was doing with the company. James' wife, Caitlin, owned her own pastry company before Blue Bottle, and does all of our entire food program for the company. She's in charge of that. And here at the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, she took this opportunity to make pastries. You can see some of them in this photo that actually resemble the pieces of art in the museum. And this has become a part of the business. She has her own book called Modern Art Desserts. She tours, and we actually sell some of those pieces of pastry art on our website. The Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco is currently closed for renovation until 2016, so you can't visit here for another few years. After these stores in San Francisco grew, we grew out of the potting shed and actually out of a garage that James had rented, and moved into the roastery where we currently are in Oakland, California, in Jack London Square on Webster Street. Like I said, we don't start with any inventory of roasted coffee in the morning. Everything we roast is fresh to the orders that were placed the day before, and they go out that night or early in the next morning to all the cafes, and then we start fresh the next day. Freshness is a very important part of our business model. We have a 75-kilo roaster here in Oakland. You can see it sort of in the center of the picture behind the mixer. And also a 35-kilo Loring, which is a new roaster that we just recently installed. We also have a small cafe. This is a very industrial area, but still this cafe is very busy. There's a line every day, all day. And this is also where we do our quality control and our cupping. Here's our cupping lab here. A couple of the newer cafes in San Francisco. One is at Heath Ceramics. Heath Ceramics is the oldest ceramics company in the United States that is, everything is still made in the United States and hasn't been taken to overseas to China. The Heath Ceramics tile business has become very lucrative for them. So they recently opened a tile factory and a retail location in an industrial part of the Mission District in San Francisco. And we have a coffee kiosk inside of this location as well. And then our newest store in Oakland, which is really exciting. It's bigger than all of our Bay Area stores combined. It's called W.C. Morris. One of probably my favorite cafe, or second favorite cafe in the company. This is a car dealership that was built in 1909. It was the first car dealership in the entire Bay Area. And it was built, of course, just after the 1906 earthquake, which destroyed most things in the Bay Area. This building is very big and was vacant for the last 20 or 30 years. And this is what we recently opened. Really beautiful coffee bar. We also moved our tech department into this space and offer a home espresso machine repair service. So if you have a machine at home, you can bring it here. And that is actually something that a lot of people don't do in the States. People buy machines. There's no one who can repair them. We actually had to hire 3 people just to keep that business going because it was so popular. We also do sell some of the machines here. In 2010, James took on a little bit of investment to open in New York. And New York continues to be our fastest growing market up until today. LA is kind of going to edge that out here soon. But we opened a roastery in Brooklyn. And we still operate in this roastery. Next year, we'll be moving to an off-site location because we're at a point where we're at capacity here. We can't actually open a new cafe in New York and maintain it because we're at capacity here. Again, the coffee bar, and then also more Japanese brew methods. Iced coffee is really popular in New York, especially in the hot months. So we have these OG drippers that take 24 hours to make a really, really beautiful cold cup of coffee. And New York is where we've grown quite a bit. After Berry Street, we opened a seasonal cafe on the High Line. The High Line is an elevated train track in New York that used to be one of the subway lines. It's been shut down. And about 10 years ago, they started turning it into a park. And along this park, there's a number of cafes. And we have one there. Of course, this is only opened when the weather's nice, which it's not nice in the winter in New York. Our busiest store in New York City is in Rockefeller Center, in One Rockefeller Center, the food area when you come off the subway. This is currently our busiest store in New York, also another very, very heavily Japanese-influenced design. James is very, very, very much still involved in the day-to-day with the company. As I started 3 years ago, was very much involved in coffee. As we've grown, as we've taken on investment, James's primary focus is the cafes. James is the one who finds or takes a look at real estate that's found with him for us, takes his time to be in the cafe, and really all of this comes out of James's head. Much of this design is how James envisions the space fitting into the neighborhood and to the environment that it's in. So what you see really is sort of born out of our founder and CEO's head, James. This is what he spends most of his time doing. His entire office is just him drawing on a board. A couple more stores in New York. Chelsea. This is in a quieter neighborhood of Chelsea, or part of Chelsea, this particular street. So here we have a coffee bar below where you can get a latte or a drip coffee to go. But also upstairs, we have a sit-down only siphon bar. There's no takeaway. You sit down and you have a very curated experience with your coffee and your brew method and the barista who's making your coffee. And then some newer stores in New York. Hell's Kitchen just opened about a year ago. There's not a lot of stuff in Hell's Kitchen, businesses, but people are moving there. This is another facility that's similar to the Ferry Building in San Francisco, where you can get really great cheese and meat and wine and all the things you need to eat. It's also a bicycle shop you can see, a very neighborhood shop. Most people who live in this neighborhood are the people who visit here. And then finally, my favorite, or not finally, we got one more, but my favorite store in New York is actually our smallest store in the company. It's in an area called Cobble Hill or Boerum Hill, probably the quietest neighborhood in Brooklyn, just lots of families, not a whole lot of, really activity or, partying going on there. Really tiny, tiny cafe. That's the entire space that you see also here. No seats, just a couple outside. So also notice that we own and operate all of our stores, but they all look a little different. One thing we really focus on is brand recognition. We actually don't advertise at all. We have a policy. Our advertising budget for Blue Bottle is $0. We don't pay for advertising at all. And we generally don't even have the name. You just see we have the blue bottle, and that bottle and the quality of the coffee are the things that carry the brand. And then we're able to really have unique stores that fit into their neighborhood and into their environment. This store opened last week. I haven't even been there yet. It's in Bryant Park, which for those of you who visited New York, Bryant Park's a very busy part of Manhattan, just a few blocks away from Times Square. And this store will very quickly become our busiest store in New York, hands down. You could already see this is from day 2, I think. There's a huge line around the corner. Another just really, really stunningly beautiful space. I'll be there in about 3 weeks. I'm excited to see it. And we recently, in the last year, took on another round of investment. And our kind of the folks that are investing in us are kind of unique. The primary investors were assembled by Google Ventures, who Google Ventures normally predominantly invests in startup companies, startup tech companies. Deciding to invest in a coffee company is something that's really unique and sort of outside of Google Ventures' normal portfolio. But our emphasis on retail and now also our emphasis on digital, which I'll get to in a minute, is what's fueled that. So with some of that investment we got last year in April, we acquired 2 companies to help grow our brand a little bit. One of them is called Handsome Coffee Roasters. We acquired it in April. This was Handsome Coffee Roasters. They had 1 location and a number of wholesale accounts. This is in the downtown arts district in Los Angeles. Handsome Coffee Roasters was founded by Michael Phillips, who was the 2010 World Barista Champion. He's now our director of training for Blue Bottle. And they were needing either some more investment or needing something to change at Handsome. There was some change in the structure there. And we were also looking for a roasting facility in this very neighborhood in LA. LA, we had already signed several leases on for retail. Los Angeles is the most difficult city to open a roasting facility in because of all of the regulations there. By acquiring Handsome, we were able to move into a facility that was already in operation, acquire a really good team of people. For them, they were really excited. Their staff got health insurance. They all got raises right away, and we kept pretty much most of the team. So in July, Handsome officially changed to Blue Bottle, and I was just actually working on this presentation yesterday here at this cafe. And then just about a month ago, we opened our second retail location in Venice, California, Abbot Kinney. This is a really cool, smaller store, kind of reminds me of an Apple store. Also, we try to incorporate interesting elements of art. So in this store, we have a LED light wall. This is 50,000 LED lights. The color is controlled by James's iPhone. So wherever he is in the world, he can change the color. But this is the Pantone color for Blue Bottle, so it really doesn't change there. In the Christmas, we might do a red, kind of like Apple does. We actually recently hired a gentleman from Apple who had been with Apple for 12 years, and he helped implement the Genius Bar in Apple Retail, and he's now our head of retail. So retail, again, like I said, is a big focus of the company, and we're going to continue to think outside of the box. We want our customers to have the best guest experience possible. We believe the app really achieved that with their retail locations. So with Orion joining us, we're really excited about the future of our retail, having more cool stuff like this. And then we have a lot of stuff in the works right now. We have 8 stores being constructed. Maybe a 9th one just got added that's not here. Again, heavily expanding in Los Angeles. This is a new store in an area called Echo Park. Again, used to be not the greatest neighborhood. Now it's a very hip neighborhood in LA. We'll be opening in this building here, a multi-purpose building. Beverly Hills, Beverly Boulevard, also early next year. Culver City, not too far from Venice. Culver City is where a lot of studios are for television shows. This was going to be our first store in LA, but the construction project on the entire building is delayed, so probably going to be about middle 2015. And also also still growing in our original market, San Francisco. San Francisco is actually, even though there's a lot of coffee, still fairly underserved for the amount of people that are there. This is in the financial district where there's hardly any coffee. This will be a larger store, 1,900 square feet at the bottom of this building. Sansom and Bush are the cross streets. We'll also have a food program here as well. This is Mid-Market and 9th in San Francisco. This building is being renovated to become the second Twitter building. Twitter, as some of you might know, is based in San Francisco. They're the last large tech company that hasn't moved south because the city of San Francisco offers them some pretty nice tax benefits to stay within the city. The entire bottom of this building is will be turned into an open-air market with several food purveyors from all over. We're going to be in there with our coffee. And this is actually probably the next store that will open in January of 2015. It's a former theater called the Varsity Theater that was closed for a number of years. It was a Borders bookstore. They're opening it back up as a theater, and we'll have a 5,000 square foot co-working space, and we'll have a cafe in the front of that. And this one's up on the fast track to open right now. I just saw some construction pictures yesterday, actually. And then finally, Tokyo, which is where I was coming from to be here. We will be opening our first roastery and cafe, which you'll see these photos here, February 6th. And our second cafe will be in Aiyama, which is a little bit more of a touristy part of West Tokyo. And that will open March the 7th, 2015. Really beautiful. Everything's happening. We actually just roasted the first batch of coffee on Tuesday when I was there on our sample roaster, and today they roasted the first batches on the Loring. Really, really beautiful space, really excited. The buzz in Tokyo is really, really crazy right now. Everywhere I went, everyone knows about Blue Bottle. I feel like the buzz is even bigger than it is in the US, so we're excited, a little scared, but we just want to make really nice coffee. One of the ways we've been able to attract customers is our drink offerings. This is actually our most popular drink. We serve single origin Kenyan coffees and geishas and espressos, but our most popular drink is actually not so much of a connoisseur's drink. It's something that's called New Orleans style coffee, and it's a coffee concentrate that's made with chicory, cane sugar, and organic milk. And it's a little bit sweetened. It's delicious on a hot day. This is sort of our version of the Frappuccino. This is how we sort of bring people in. Some people have this experience, and this is the only thing they ever want to drink from us. So we've had this drink in our menu for the past many, many years, ever since the company opened. But in March, we started distributing them in packages like this. And first at Whole Foods Market, now throughout California, we have a distribution system, and also in New York City at Whole Foods Market and at our own stores. These are very popular. We're producing about 23,000 units per week right now, and we're going to look to expand those into other markets. But again, everything's certified organic. The coffee was the easy part. Certified organic chicory is a challenge. And then the other company, I mentioned we acquired 2 companies in April. The other one we acquired is called Tonks. Tonks was a subscription-based company that was kind of a melding of tech people and coffee people. And Tonks had about 7,000 subscribers when we purchased them. And those subscribers, every 2 weeks for the past 4 years, would receive a different single origin coffee in the mail, just like a magazine. They didn't have a choice of what that coffee was. It was curated, and everyone got the same coffee. We still have that subscription service, and now, basically with Tonks, we wanted the team of programmers. We are doing a really good job with retail and providing a guest experience. It's unparalleled there. But we want more people in America, people who aren't drinking good coffee, to drink good coffee. So we're really trying to expand digital and have the best overall retail experience, not only in the stores, but also digitally and online as possible. So our goal for digital is to grow at 100% every year. Our company is growing strong. So far, 2014 over 2013, we've grown 65% in revenue. So we're at a tremendous growth period right now. And this digital and this Google Ventures is picking up steam, probably also why we're having a lot of buzz in Japan. James was on the cover of Wired magazine, Japan, just a couple months ago. People are really interested in what we're doing. And also this sort of take on different products like the New Orleans style. Fast Company just named us one of the top 10 most innovative companies of food in the world, which is awesome. Lastly, I'm just going to finish up here. This is our mission statement: deliciousness, hospitality, sustainability. Whenever we make any decision at Blue Bottle, we sit around a table and we always say, does this decision follow deliciousness, hospitality, and sustainability? And there's some trade-offs I'll talk about real briefly. I'm almost done, don't worry. Deliciousness, obviously, finding some really great green coffee, roasting it really well, preparing it really well, keeping it fresh, keeping it whole bean. We actually don't offer ground coffee to our customers in our store. We only sell whole bean coffee. We sell them a grinder if they want it ground. One thing about quality is I think people don't understand the levels of quality. Our quality control systems are so intense. They're very, very critical to our operation. A lot of producers say, oh, you demand so much in quality, but we demand quality not just from the producers, but from our roasters, from our baristas, all the way down the line. Every single batch of coffee is cupped across the entire company. The head roaster then can see how quality control has cupped the coffee every day, and then she can look at the all of this information as to how the coffee was roasted and communicate with the roasters that we want the coffee to either be this color or we want it to follow this curve for every single lot of coffee that we have and every single profile that we have. This is what we do. And then, because we have so many retail locations, we don't want the communication breakdown to happen at the retail location either. So at every retail location, there's anywhere between 3 and 6 coffees that the baristas are serving: a regular espresso, a decaf espresso, a drip coffee, sometimes 2 drip coffees, sometimes 2 espressos. So upwards of 6. Every morning they have to dial in the coffee, which they're trained on for many hours on doing, how much they're dosing, how much they're yielding, what the grind setting is, all of that, and they write it down. And at the end of their shift, they do the normal thing like count out the money and do the deposit, but then they have to put every single note into our system here. So this is me, I'm the barista, and I dialed in this coffee on a Chemex, and this is how it tasted, and then that information gets submitted. Then as QC, or even as another barista, if you have a new coffee, you can come in here, and I could log on today, and I could see how all of our coffees are brewed today in our cafes. It'll show me the coffee, the location, the barista, how it was brewed, the dial-in notes. So we take it very seriously, down to the cup that's being served to the customer. Lastly, hospitality. I think that's pretty straightforward. Awesome customer service, presentation, endless training and education. And then finally, sustainability. In the coffees that we buy, in giving health care to our employees, which of course healthcare in the US is tough, stewardship for our coffees that we buy, a focus on retail. We really believe that by serving coffee directly to our customers, we're cutting one more step out of the supply chain, and we are bringing the customer that much closer to the producer. But like I said, there's trade-offs. For the coffees that we sell in our retail stores, we sell them in 100% compostable bags. You'll notice that they weren't valve-sealed bags. They're actually also post-consumer recycled material, so they're very, very sustainable. The issue with those bags is they don't keep the coffee fresh for very long. So that's why we keep it fresh, and we only sell coffee that's 48 hours out of the roaster. Of course, there's always a balance there. For coffees that we ship in our online store, coffee that gets shipped does not do well in a compostable paper bag. So for the coffees that we ship, we put them in valve-sealed bags. We always try to have the best possible product and be the most sustainable at the same time. And there's always a little bit of a balance there. So thanks so much for listening. It's a little bit about Blue Bottle.